Hello everyone, welcome back again. My name is Jesse, and in this wonderful and exciting tutorial, we're trying to see how to use SQL in Pandas in Jupyter Notebook, right? So this is going to be a very exciting tutorial. So let's start with it. So Pandas, as we all know, the full name of Pandas is Panel Data. It's a very wonderful tool that allows you to be able to manipulate data, right? And then SQL is also a very essential tool, which stands for Structured Query Language. It's a very powerful tool in case you want to be a data scientist, you want to be a data analyst, or in case you even want to build web applications that takes in data from users, right? It's a very essential tool to know. So let's explore it. So these are some of the common default commands that allows you to be able to use one line of code to be able to retrieve and then work with data. So these are some of the common ones. So from, where, group by, having, select, order by, limit, right? So very simple and very interesting. Now the default SQL is case insensitive, right? But it's better that sometimes you follow a particular style in which either use uppercase for all your SQL commands, right? Which is better and more readable. So let's start with it. So first of all, we start with Pandas, then you move on to SQL. So in case this is going to be our packages, Pandas and then NumPy. So how do you read data in Pandas, right? So that's going to be the first thing. So in case I have my data there, I want to read it inside Pandas. So pd.read _csv. Now pass in my data, right? So in case I'm reading a simple data set, I can just go with this. We have all of this data set and now I can read it perfectly. So in case I want to preview this one to see what I've read, I go with this option, I can see that my data set is already there, right? Very simple. That is the first one. So how to read data into Pandas. Now let's see how to read data in SQL. So it's very simple. It's going to be reading data in SQL, how to read data in, or how do you load data, right? Load data in SQL, right? How do you load your data? So first of all, you must import the package. So import SQLite 3. You can also use SQL engine, so SQL Alchemy, right? So any of them is going to work, right? So either use the first one or the second one, but let's use SQLite for now to make our connection to our database. Then the next thing that you must connect to your database. So the first step is you import the package. The next step is that you must make a connection to the database, right? Whatever database you are using, right? So how do you do that? So let's use SQLite. It's going to be SQL. So let's call the variable called connection, then SQLite 3. Then I'll just go with connect and I'll pass in my data, right? So the data I'm passing in is inside my data folder. We have my world SQLite. So you can use this one, you can use any of them, right? Any of them will work. Perfect. Now after making connection, you can now use any tool to read it, right? You have made connection. In case I want to read it inside Pandas, read that particular data inside Pandas, how do I do that? So that's how do you read SQL table into Pandas data frame. So it's very simple. Just go with my df and let's call it as df SQL, right? And I just go with pd.read SQL, right? Now pass in the simple sentence, right? So select all from the particular table that we have. So the table that we had was country inside it, and I'm just going to specify the connection. That's how to read it. So it's going to read it from Pandas and then put the data back. So if I go back and I check it out, SQL, so we have our data set there, right? Very simple. And one thing you have to notice that SQL, everything is a table. In SQL, everything is a table. The result is always a table, right? Which is very nice. Okay, so that is how to read data in Pandas, right? And how to also read data from SQL or any database into Pandas. Very simple. Now let's see how to use SQL in Jupyter Notebook, right? So how do you use SQL in Jupyter Notebook? So the first option is just go with this. You need to first of all install this particular package, right? So Python, so go back to your terminal. Then inside your terminal, you're going to install it. So pip install Python SQL, right? So that is the package you need. So you need this particular package to be able to work inside Jupyter Notebook, right? That's how you have to install it first. Then after installing it, so this is how you install it. So pip install Python SQL, and now we can be able to see how to work with it. So to be able to work inside Jupyter Notebook, this next step is I'm supposed to activate it. So activate, right? SQL magic inside. So to activate this, just go with this, my percent then load extension, right? It's an extension SQL. So if I go with this, now I'll be able to use SQL inside my Jupyter Notebook. Perfect. That is it. Now let's see how to load our dataset here, right? So this time you'll not be going to Pandas, we're just going straight on how to load datasets here. So how to load datasets, or how to load database rather. Let's go database in Jupyter Notebook, right? SQLite. So we are using SQL. So how do you do that? So simple, just go with my, there are some rules to understand when you are trying to work with it. So the first rule is that we have this particular percent SQL, which is a line oriented approach, or we have this percent SQL, which is a cell oriented approach, right? So you can use this one. If anytime you're using this one, that means that you're going to put the code as one line. Anytime you're using this one, that means that the whole cell is going to be seen as SQL, right? Very simple. So how do you load the database? So you can just go straight away with this option and just go with my percent SQL, right? Then I'll just pass in my SQLite. Then I'll specify the path to the dataset, right? So inside my data folder, I have my world.SQLite, right? So that is how to load the dataset. So it's going to go to that particular folder. So connection, just made a connection, right? Perfect. So you can also use SQL Alchemy, as I was saying, right? Any of them is going to work, and this is the relative path you can use, right? So this is the path you're supposed to use. So that's why I just given us this option. So this option here, run it, and now we have access to our dataset. Very simple. Now how do you preview the data, right, within SQL and in Pandas? We already saw that to preview data in Pandas, just go with df.head, then you can just preview the dataset, right, in Pandas, right? So that is how to do it. Or just go straight away with this and have access to the dataset in Pandas. So how do you do the same thing inside SQL, right? So it's very simple, and inside Jupyter Notebook. So as I said, there are two methods. We have the first method here, right, and the second method. So let's check it out. I'll come down here and I'll show you the first method. So this is going to be the first method one. This is going to be method one. So this method one, which is line oriented, right? So this is going to be the line oriented. So it's going to be my percent, my SQL, then I'll pass in my command. So I can just pass in any command. So let's go to select all from the table. So the table that you're using is the country table. So run it. Now it's going to automatically identify the available database and give us the result, right? Perfect. That is very cool, right? So that is the first method, using line oriented. I can also do the same thing using cell oriented by going with the same approach. So this is going to be method 2. This is the cell oriented, right? So in that case, it's going to be the same thing, percent, then SQL. Then I can now come down here to select all from, right? So you can just use this option, or just go straight away with this, let all from country. If I run it now, it's giving us select all from country, right? So perfect. So it's working. So the reason it's giving us this particular error here is that anytime you bring this percent, your comment should not be here, right? Because it's picking the whole cell, right? So the whole cell is going to be executed, not like this one that is picking that particular line. This is picking the whole cell. This is cell oriented, right? So the whole cell is going to be executed. That's why I just given us that particular error. So that is how to preview data in SQL. So just go with select all from country, right? Either using this one, that is the one liner, or using this one, which is the whole cell, right? Or multiple lines, the whole cell. Now let's move on from here, and let's see how to get the first n rows in Pandas, right? In our database. So in Pandas, you can just go straight away with this. To get all the rows, you just, in Pandas is like this. So this is in Pandas. So df.head. Let's say I want the first 5 rows. This is going to give us the one in Pandas, right? I can do the same thing for the last row. So the first or the last rows, which can be like this, the tail, right? So both of them can be done. Now how do you do the same thing in SQL, right? So how do I do this inside SQL? So it's very simple. It's going to be this option here. So to be able to do that in SQL, to get the first n rows, can just go the same way. in SQL, right? So since we are giving comments, let's go with the liner. So SQL, so select all from country, then limit. So let's say limit, we are going to specify the limit that we want to go. So limit, let's say 5. So limit 5, if I go with limit 5, it's going to give us just the 5, right? Very simple. That is how to get the first n rows in SQL. So select all from country limit, limited by 5. You can also put the exclamation to stop it here, and it's still going to work. Perfect. That is the first rule, right? The first method. Now, how do you list all columns inside the database? So to get a list of columns in Pandas, just go with this option. Perfect. And you could notice that anytime I do this option here, so df.head, right? If I run this one, you see that it comes with a column header, right? You can also do the same thing inside SQL, by which if I go with this, see that we did not see the column. We saw the column header, right? Very nice, right? So there's a way you can also do it. In case you're not seeing it, just go with the dot header to uncomment it, right? To see it out. Perfect. Okay, that is how simple it is. Now let's move on to how to get data and then description. How do you get the data type for your project? So in Pandas, it's going to be in Pandas, it's like this. So df.dtypes to get the data types. Very simple. In case I also want to get a description, let's go with df.describe. So this is going to give us more information about the data set, right? Very simple. Together with the count, mean, standard deviation. This is like description. This is like summary. So how do you get the data type inside SQL? So going to be this option. How to get data types, right? So it's simple. So this is not just get the data type, get data types plus the table info. So table info, right? Which is like more information about what you have. Just go with this option. So my SQL, then I just go with my pragma, then table info. I pass in my data or my table, right? So this is going to give us the information about what we have. So the same thing that we had here, in which we had the names together with their data type, you can also have something similar here. So we have our names and then data type, right? So very interesting, very simple. It's not able to give us a lot of information, but we can use this particular approach to get information about it, and use the same thing to get the column names. Perfect. Now, how do you get table info? So you have seen how to get that one inside SQL using pragma, right? So this was for this one. So let's go back here. You can also use the information schema in case you want it to help you get information about your data table in your database. Now, one of the most important things is when you are working with data is the ability to select. So how do you select fields in Pandas, right? So how do I select fields in Pandas? Go to my thing in Pandas. Go to be df dot. In case I want to select something, there are two ways. So we have the bracket notation. So bracket notation. That's the first one. So in that case, it's going to be my df. Then if I have a column, so let's list the columns first before we move on. So I have my columns here. So df.columns. So df.columns. Right. So these are my columns. In case I want to select, let's say, the name column and then the region column, the name column, let's go with the bracket notation. So this is the bracket notation, right, in SQL, right, in Pandas. So this is method 1. We also have the dot notation. So this is in Pandas. This will be method 2. We have the dot notation for selection. So that is going to be very simple. The same thing, dot the particular name, right? So this is the dot notation. So to bring in the dot, then the name of the column, right, or the name of the field. That is for how to work with in Pandas, right? Now this is method 2. Let's check method 3. So this is going to be the same thing in Pandas. So this is going to be the iLoc option or the loc option. So location notation. Yeah, I'll call it like for selection, right? So how do you do that? So it's very simple. Just go df.loc, then you go with this particular option. So this means pick every column irrespective, pick every row, right? A minute, going like this. Then now specify the column I want to pick. So this is important, this is simple to use, and then the other one too is also very simple to use, right? All of them are good to use, but this is also one of the recommended methods, right? Using this approach. So it's going to give you the same thing as we have been getting above, right? So we see that all of them, we got to the same thing we had here, right? But this one gives you a very better option, right? You can do a lot of things without giving error. Perfect. That is it. That is how to select columns in Pandas. Now let's see how to select fields inside SQL, right? So how do I select fields inside SQL? So it's very simple. So let's use the percent cell. So it's going to be my select all, right? So whatever column that I want to select. So let's say I want to select the name column. So by default is this from let's say my column, so country, right? If I go with this option, it's going to select every column. This one select every column from our database, right? But so that means that everything in between here is our column. So I just specify the column I want to select, name from column. So this is case insensitive, so it's going to only bring the name. SQL is case insensitive, right? Perfect. So you have gotten the name there. Very cool. So that is how to make some selections with SQL, right? Now how do you select multiple fields inside Pandas, right? So how do you select multiple fields inside Pandas? It's going to be the same option. For Pandas, it's going to be this. So df dot the particular multiple columns I want. So let's say I want to get the name, and then I also want to get the region, right? So just like SQL is case insensitive, right? But Pandas is case sensitive. So if I go with this, although it's the same meaning, it's not going to find anything. I have to make sure that it's the same names written in the column, right? That's giving us the option of selecting multiple columns. That is one of the ways. You can also use the ilog option that we did, which is this option here. So df.log, not ilog. Then I'll specify I want to get all the rows from these two columns. So we have this, we have the name, and then you also have the region. So this is also going to work and give you the same thing that we had above, right? So either you use this option here or use this option here. All of them is going to work, right? Perfect. That is how to select multiple columns inside Pandas. Now let's move on from here, and then let's move on to how to do the same thing we did inside SQL. So how do you select it inside SQL? So in case you have any question or contribution, let us know. And in case you are enjoying this, also let us know, right? So how do you select multiple columns or fields inside SQL? So the simplest approach is just go with this option. So let's use a cell oriented. So select all. So I want to select multiple columns. So I want to select the name column, so name, and then the region column. So from the country. So that is how to, okay, so this is how to select multiple fields, right? So I just printed the same thing there. So that is one of the ways. Perfect. So let's move on to the next thing now. It's very important for everybody to know. How do you select columns based on a field, say in Pandas and then in SQL? So in case I have some columns and I want to select it based on a field, I can just go with this. So df, right? And I want to select based on a field. So let's say if you go back to my data set here, we had a region column, and then some of them are in categories, right? So we have Central Asia, South Europe. So I want to select them, right, if they are all in West Africa, right, or Western Africa. So how do I do that? So the same thing. So I'll just go back again to the same thing that we did, right, without making any mistake. I'll say, okay, I want to get the region column. So from the region column, get anything that is West Africa. So Western Africa. So this is going to return a true or false. So in case you want to actually return the entire data set, just pass it back again. So this is going to return all the countries in our data, or all the data points that have West Africa. So all of them are Western Africa. Very simple. So how do you do the same thing inside SQL? So SQL also have the option of doing that, which is going to be this option. So let's go with my cell option. So in this case, I'm going to be select all from country. Then I'll just go with the where option. So where the region, right, I want. So where region is equal to West Africa, Western Africa. So if I go with this option now, it's going to pick only those rows that are Western Africa, which is the same thing that we had here, right? The same thing, Benin, the same thing we are having here, right? So you can also almost do the same thing that you can do with Pandas with SQL. Now let's move on to how to select columns based on the condition in Pandas, right? So we have seen how to select columns based on the condition in Pandas in SQL. In case I want to select also multiple columns, right? And then I want to filter all the values in the columns that begin with a particular feature, like a particular theme or alphabet. It's very important to know this. In Pandas, it will be like this. It's going to be in Pandas, right? It's going to be my df. Then I'm going to specify what I want to select. So let's go with the name option. I'm going to convert it to a string. And I'm going to select, okay, if it starts with, let's say I want to get all countries that start with A, right? So this is going to return from all the countries that start with A. So these ones are just B. But if any of the countries start with A, I'm going to only pick that one out. This is very useful, right? This is a very powerful tool. So I go with this. All the countries that start with A are going to be returned here, right? The same way I can also do for SQL. So how do you select based on a particular condition, right? I want to get all of them that start with A. In case I also want to get all of them that ends with a particular value. So let's say ends with G, right? This is ends with G. Right, so just Hong Kong and the Luxembourg. So this is a simple way you can use to manipulate the data. Now, how do you do that inside SQL? So how do you filter based on a condition? So just as we have here, so it's going to be the same thing. So this is where we use, inside SQL, we use this particular approach. We use the like, right? And then you just move on from the like. Then you specify what you want to do, specify the stuff. So this means that before this one is preface, right? So anything that begins right? So anything that begins with this particular character. So I want to get all the part of the column that starts with A. So it's very simple. It's going to be my command. So select. So the command that you are using is my SQL command. So select all from country where, like, then I'm going to specify that I want to get all countries that begins with A. If I go with this option now, you see that we are going to, right, so we are selecting all countries from country where that particular thing that we need, name, is equal to like A. So that's giving us the same result we had back here, right? You can also do the same thing for the Hong Kong, right? But this time I'm not going to be using back select or something. Just go straight away with this option, right? And just move on from here. You just change this one from the front to the back. If I go with this, you're going to have from the back. So all the countries that ends with A, let's make it G. All the countries that ends with G, right? Hong Kong and Luxembourg, just as we had previously for the Pandas session. Now, how do you select rows that contain a particular term in Pandas, right? And then we see how to do the same thing in SQL. So in case I want to select rows that contains a particular pattern in Pandas, just go with df. Then I'll just specify the particular column that I want. So let's say I want to get my region column. As you can see, I want to get all the parts of the region column that has southern inside, right? So dot string dot contains. I pass in the particular word I want, right? So I want to check if it contains a particular term. So let's put on the term. So southern. So southern. So if I go with this straight away, I have to put inside this one in order not to get the true false. We're going to get all the countries that have southern within them, right? Very simple. So that is how to do that inside Pandas. That is one of the ways. Pandas have a lot of ways you can do a lot of things. Now, how do you do the same thing for SQL. So it's going to be the same thing. So select all from region, select all from the particular column that you want. So we want to get my region, all from country, where, like, then now I'm going to put a percent here. So percent first, then the percent again. So that means that okay, I want 2%, right? So either I pick all the rows that contains a particular way, and that particular way is south. So this is going to pick any rows, whether it is beginning, any rows that so far it contain this particular south, it's going to return the result. So it's giving us this error. So the reason it's giving us the error is that we forgot to initialize the SQL. So it's going to be my SQL, right? And I can come down here and I just run it. Perfect. So now don't forget. So we always forget where, like, it's supposed to be where the particular column that you want. So the particular column that you want is region, right? And just go straight away. So now it's going to give us one of the things you notice that anytime the command is executed and is accurate, we just go with the done. We get it done. We get that result, right? So all the countries, all the regions, that all the data point that has the region column with south, very interesting. The same thing that we had using the pandas. So I've seen how to use both of these things concurrently. Now let's move on to how to select rows which contains value from a list, right? So that is a very important thing that sometimes we need to know. How do you select rows which contains values from a list in pandas? So in pandas it's going to be like this. So I have my column that I want to select. So yeah, let's still use the region, right? So df, then I'll just specify the region column that I want. Then I want to get and check if it contains any of these particular ones. So I want to get all the rows or all the data points that has the word Western Africa, right? So this one must be inside a list because I want to get all the rows which contains value from a list in pandas. So West Africa, I want Western Europe, right? So these are the two places I want, right? So West Africa and Western Europe. So how do I get it? So df, this is going to select everything for us. So df here, and then df here. I hope everybody can see it. I hope it's not too small. Hope all that I'm doing is not very small for everybody. Okay, so that is how to do that, right? It's working perfectly well. So that we can get our result perfectly, right? So the result is there. Everybody can see it. So that is how to select rows which contains values from a list in pandas. Now, how do you do this same thing inside SQL? So it's the next option, how to select rows which contains value from a list in SQL. So it's going to be the same thing, or the same code you want. Result, so select all, right, from the table, and in the table that I want to select, I want to get a particular option. So select all from country where the region, right, where the region, so let's make it like this, where the region in, this is where we use it in. So in, I pass in my list in West Africa. So the same thing that we had here. So Western Africa, then we have the next one which is Western Europe, right? So these are the two main options that we can use to help us get our result. So it's going to give us the same result we had. See that we had what was it? Yeah, we have some of them. Well, it's almost the same thing that we had here. Where region in West Africa and Western Europe. So we have gotten almost the same thing. Yeah, right. Very simple and very cool. So that is how to select rows from a database which contains value from a list in SQL, and a one for pandas. Let's move on to some of the things we are supposed to do, then we'll be done. How do you select rows which meet a condition from two columns? So this is where we use the or the pipe, or the and the ampersand. So how do you select rows which meet a condition from two columns. So I want to select all rows, right, or all data points in my region column. So I want to select all rows that meet a particular condition. So get my region column. I want to get all of them that are in Western Europe. So Western Europe, right, this one. So this is going to give us true. So this, the moment I did this, is going to affect the entire data set, right? It's supposed to be equal to, not equal. So I have to go back and reload them, right? Because that's changed what I was doing. So let's reload the data set again. So we have it back. Because that was an assignment, but we are checking for equal to. So let's go back again. Just here. Now if I go with this option, it's going to give us true, false. Then in case I want to get all those columns, I just go with this option. So this is going to give us all those columns that meet that particular condition. Right, perfect. Now this is the first condition. So I want to check for another column and then another condition. So in that case, I can just go back again and put this one inside brackets. Okay, yeah, bracket like this. For this a whole condition on its own. So this is one condition, right? And I want to say that okay, and another condition. So and another condition. So df. Then I want to get the life expectancy. So do you see that we have the life expectancy here? I want to get the life expectancy that is greater than 60, right? So this is going to be another condition. So these are the two conditions. I can just close them here. So I made a mistake. I have to fix this one. Yep. So now we are done. So this is the first condition. Is it Western Europe and is the life expectancy greater than 60? Is that all of them are greater than 60 and then all of them are in Western Europe? That is how to select rows from which meets a condition from two columns. How do you do the same thing with all? So this is for and. In case I want to also do the same thing for all, I'll just come back here and I'll change this one from this to pipe. Right, you can also use all like this. No, all like this. See. Right, I can use all like this, or I prefer to go with this option. Right, so any of them is going to work. Right, okay. Now let's see how to do the same thing with a condition with SQL. So how do you do what you did above? How do we do this here? How is my English? I don't know. My English is becoming something. I feel like my English is going. So SQL, I'll just go with my SQL. Then I'll just go the same thing. So how do you do that? So let me select all from the country called at the table where the region is Western Europe. Right, that is the first one. And the life expectancy. So life expectancy is greater, right, than 60. So this is wrong. It's supposed to be, because it's a column. Yep, is 60, right? Oh yeah, it's greater than 60. So run it. Now it's going to give us the same result we had above. Right, so this is how to do that. So you can use this option here to get it, or in case you want to do the or, you can also do the same thing here. So you see how easy it is for you to use SQL together with and as well as Pandas, right? So almost all the things you can do with Pandas, you can also do them, most of them, with SQL. As a matter of fact, I can do all of them with SQL. Right, very nice. So it is working perfectly well. Okay, so that is it. So you have seen how to select columns which meets a condition from two columns. Now, how do you check for unique and missing values? So this is going to be some of the last thing we're doing. Then you have call it a day. So how do you check for unique values, right, in Pandas and in SQL? So I'll just go back again in case I want to see how to do that. come back here and I'll show you how to do that. So in Pandas, like this, so df dot the particular column I want to get all the unique values inside region. That's what we are using for now. So this is going to give us all the unique values, right? Very nice. I can also do the same thing for the number of unique values. So it's going to be this. So df region dot n unique, right? I can't spell n unique, so it's supposed to be n unique. Whoa, yeah, everybody knows it. So that's how to do that, right? It's still taking some time. So you have seen how to do these two things in Pandas. Now how do you do the same thing inside SQL? How do you get the unique values inside SQL, right? It's going to be for SQL, right? 25. So this is one of the ways. You can also do the same thing we did here. Same way we did. You can also come down here and then just go with my length and you pass in this, right? So it's still going to give us the same 25, right? So any of them is going to work. Now how do you do the same thing for SQL? So we can just use, let's use this approach, the single line, then select, right, distinct. So select distinct, going to pick distinct rows from that particular column or field, then from the table, so the table column. And now we see that we're going to get the same thing, right? So these are the same thing we had here, the same thing you're having here, right? Very simple. We can also do the same thing for the count. In case you want to do that, so this is where we'll be introducing some of the simple commands in SQL, such as sum, count, average. So in case I want to get a count or number of unique in SQL, right? So number of unique values in a column, in a field, right? In SQL, how do you do that? So the same thing. So it's going to be my single line, so SQL, then I just go with my select, then distinct, right, from the country. So this will give us the all of them. Now we need to specify the regions, distinct region, right? Perfect. Now how do I count it? So to count it, just go back again and I'll just pass in my count. So I'm going to count the entire result coming. So count. If I go with this, now it's going to count it and give us the same result, 25, just as we had here, right? Very simple, very cool. Okay, so let's see how to work with missing values. So how do you get missing values in Pandas, and how do you move on to do value count in Pandas? So how do you get missing values in Pandas? So this is going to be in Pandas. So missing value, missing, I can't spell, yeah, missing values, right? So there are two ways we use the is none and then is null. Is any of them is going to work. So df dot is none. So this is one of the ways. It's none, not is none, right? It's going to give us all the false. In case I want to get the sum of them, dot sum. So this will tell me the sum of the entire stuff, right? Then dot sum again to list the total sum, right? So this is the total amount of missing values within our data set, right? So how do you do the same thing inside Pandas? In case I want to do the same thing for a column, right? For a column, it's going to be my same thing, df, then I'll specify the column that I want to get the missing value from. Then I can just go with dot s now, right? So this option here is another way, right? So this, let's put the entire stuff here to get all the missing value within a particular column, right? So there are no missing value within a particular column. So how do you do this using SQL? So for SQL, this check for missing value in a field in SQL, right? So how do you do that? It's going to be this option. Let's use a simple one. So SQL, the one liner SQL, then I'll just pass in my query. So select all from a particular column I want, right? So select all from that table where the field that I want is null. So this is another way. So it's going to give us the same thing. So empty, just as we had it. So that's one of the ways we can do that. You can also apply the same thing to the entire stuff, right? Very cool. Now let's move on from there to value count in Pandas. So how do you do value count in Pandas? Very simple. So I just pick the column that I want, the value count in Pandas. So I want to get a value count for region column, value count, then it's going to return our results, right? Perfect. That is how to get value count in Pandas. How do you do the same thing? This is method 1. Third one, right? The next method is that we are using group by or group by to also help us. This is going to be method 2. So my df, and I'll specify the column I want to group by. So df dot group by, pass in the column. So region, I want to get the count. So size or count is still going to give us the same result as above. Very simple. So this is method 1, method 2. Now how do you do the same thing for, you have seen how to do the same thing here. How do you do the same thing for SQL? So to do that, we just go back again, then let's use the command SQL, then I'll just go select all, right? So the column I want to group by, so select region, right? Then I want to also specify that I want to get a count of it. So count everything inside region field, right? Perfect. From the country, this is the table for country table, group by the region. So any of them is going to work. So if I go with this option, it's going to give us, it's giving us an error because we forgot something. So we are supposed to put a question mark here, not a question mark there. Listen, so that's giving us the same result we had here, right? 5 blah blah blah. It's the same thing we are getting from here, right? In case you want to change this particular column and to specify your own column name, you can also come back here, as you can see from here, right? In case you want to add a name to it, add a column to it, in Pandas you just have to reset it and set index at that particular point. But in SQL, you can just go back again and specify that, okay, I want to get the count as, let's say, my count, right? If I go with this option, it's going to give us the same result. Now this is called my count, right? That is how to rename the table that is coming using as, yeah? So, okay. Perfect. So let's see how to do sum and the rest. Now in Pandas, in case I want to do a sum of a particular column or a particular row, right, I can just go with the same thing I want to do. So the simplest way, just go with my df. Let's say I want to get the sum for the GDP. So GNP, we have the GNP column. I want to sum everything, right? I can just go with dot sum. So this is going to sum this for us, right? Perfect. That is one of the ways. Perfect, right? So you can use this particular approach to get the sum. In case I also want to get the mean, so df GNP, gross national product, mean, right? Just this command can give us the mean of this stuff, right? So how do you do the same thing for a column inside SQL? So we can just go back again to the same thing. So SQL, so select all, right? You want to get a sum, so select the particular column I want. So I want the JNP column, so JNP column from the tables, from table country, right? Perfect, that is it. Now I want to get a sum, so I just go back again and put inside this particular function. So these ones are already predefined, right? So this is going to give us the sum, which is the same thing that we had here, right? The same amount. I can also do the same thing for the average, for the entire stuff, which is going to be AVG. It's also going to give us the same result, right? So either you use any of them, it's going to work, right? There are a lot of functions predefined that you can use to do the same thing. Okay, now how do you do group by in Pandas? We already saw an example above. Now let's see one more, and then we'll end our tutorial because it's taking too much time and I'm talking too much. Let's say I want to do group by in Pandas, so I'm going to say, let's say df dot group by, and I'm going to pass in, I'll be passing in the particular region. So region, right? I want to group the entire dataset by the region and then by the JNP, right, in Pandas. So, and I want to get the mean of everyone. So let's check it out. So it's going to calculate it and give us the mean for every region, right? So, wow, interesting. That is how to do that. So we can also do the same thing in SQL. So one note to do that, one note to notice is when you are doing group by in SQL, you don't put the column you want to group by inside bracket. You rather leave it like that, otherwise to be giving an error. So let's see how to do the same thing we did above here, the code we wrote above, right? How do we do the same thing here, right? So it's very simple. It's just going to be this option, my SQL which is going to be the same thing. So select region, right? We want to group everything by region, so select region from country. That is the first thing, right? So this is going to return the region from country. But what I want to do is I also want to get the average of that particular region, as well as the GDP or GDP. So I can just go back again. So from region, then group by the region column. So this is going to group by the region, right? So it has grouped the entire stuff by the region, right? And in case I want to get the GDP, I just come back here and I specify that I want to get the average AVG of the GNP from this table group by region. That's given as the result, right? You can also order by, right? Also add order by that particular option. So we have gotten the same result as we got here, the same result. So biotic 7.4, same thing you're getting here, 7.4, right? It's very interesting and very cool. So we have seen how to do most of these things that we can do in Pandas alongside SQL. Now how do you create and apply a function? So the simple option of creating a function in Pandas, right, is very simple. So this is an example of a simple function that you can create inside SQL. You can also create functions and then use them inside SQL, right? So for MySQL, you can also use this particular approach. So you create the function name, right? This it must be very obvious. So create function, that is by default. Then the function name. Then this is going to be the parameters of the function, and this is going to be the return, right? Then you just put your code here, put all your computation here. Everything is going to be here. So create function, the function name, then your parameters, then what you are going to return, the return type, and then you put every code that you want to do here, right? Very simple. Then in SQLite, you just have to go with SQL.create function, then you put in your function there, right? So that is how to work with it. So thank you for watching this long tutorial. It was quite a long tutorial. I hope I was not talking too fast. My apologies. And I want you to check the links below for some interesting materials to help you master machine learning, Python, and then some cool stuff. See you another time. Stay blessed. Bye.